Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Zuko, and welcome to the second and final part in our question and answer series. Now, you don't need to watch part 1 to understand this video, but I just had to establish that. In fact, this part of the video is being recorded after everything else. In a second, my shirt's gonna change, and we're gonna head back to the past. But that's pretty much all I need to say, so hopefully you guys enjoy this one, and I think we should just get started. Alright, next up from Ando Kami, what is your favorite figure manufacturer? Hard to pick one. I'll give you my top 5. I feel like this is a topic for like an entire video just talking about all the companies, but top 5, no particular order. We got Alter, Max Factory, Q's Q, Amakuni, and Gecko. They're my favorites, absolutely. Second, do you have any favorites when it comes to the theming of a character figure's outfit or ambiance? They give a bunch of examples. It's a good question. I feel like, I don't know if this is a cop-out, but like Japanese fantasy, I don't know how to define like all the different types of outfits from say like Toho or Xenoblade or Fate. Like I like characters like that don't look like they're from this world. I also like demon girls, I like streetwear, but I don't buy a lot of figures like that. My girlfriend does, so I kind of just let her handle that. But yeah, I guess like the less grounded in reality, the more I'm probably gonna like it, unless again, it's streetwear. From Aruska, they ask, a bit personal I guess, but I've always wondered if you were from Italian descent. Yeah, I am actually Italian. Both of my parents are 100% Italian. I don't know if I ever like gave that away, if it's the way I talk. Maybe I have a bit of an accent, not really sure on that. But I also move my hands like nonstop when I talk, very Italian thing to do. But you know, I'm very American. I'm not gonna pretend like I'm really Italian, but yeah, I am. Next up, we got Page Gains. Who are some of your favorite Toho characters? It's a little hard to boil it down to just like a couple, but I'll give you 5. I don't think my tastes are super interesting or anything. Marissa, Ramelia, Patchy, Suika, and then probably Reimu. Like, I know they're basic. I know I got 2 main characters there, but I like Shrine Maidens, and I think Marissa's awesome. Also, this figure of Suika, one of my favorite like goofy figures. This thing is so cute. I love it. Next up is Kuzuryu Gundam 6670. Are there any figures you regret not picking up and now can't for whatever reason? I wouldn't call it a grail, right? You didn't say grail, but one that comes to mind is the Lord of Cinder from Dark Souls 3. Gecko made it. Not really actively looking for it, but it's like $2,500 now instead of $500 that it originally retailed for, and I'm just not gonna spend that much. So hey, maybe one day I'll get it, but not really on like the priority list right now. What hobbies do you have outside of figure collecting? Honestly, not too many. I feel like I used to have way more, but these days I'm just busy doing work, doing the channel, collecting the figures, collecting retro video games, watching anime, playing video games, nothing super interesting there. Used to speedrun, love speedrunning Mario Odyssey and Dark Souls 3. Used to build a lot of model kits like I mentioned earlier, but these days I feel like I really want to focus on editing, like video editing, and photography. I feel like while both of these are kind of involved with like work, I also find them very fun. And like the ceiling for learning is just like endless, like especially with photography as a newbie. So I think I'm going to spend more time trying to like actually learn about photography and getting more involved with it. Michael's Mail 4830, what's the most expensive figure you ever bought? I think the Guts and Griffith figures or statues from Prime 1 Studio will be the most expensive one, though technically we haven't paid for it yet. But as far as figures that I've paid for already, there's one that comes to mind. I haven't shown it on this channel yet. I don't know if many people will really be that interested in it. I could show it. Desk is a little bit of a mess. Let me go get it real quick. All right, this can't stay here, but here we have, I can see the glare on the camera already, but this is the Siegmeyer of Katarina from Dark Souls, another Gecko figure. This one typically runs you like 1,100 bucks, used to retail for 300, but managed to find it for 750. So there's a catch to that. I actually paid less, but the details will have to wait for a future video, because I don't really want to get into that right now. But definitely, initially, $750 for this guy. This is technically me spoiling the fact that I got one of my like biggest grails on my list, but it's alright. You guys are tuning into this video, so I appreciate ya. There you go. But we gotta move this guy now. Next up is Klee Cat Key. Have you or other collectors you know experienced financial difficulty due to figure purchases? How did you or them manage that situation? Thankfully, no. I'm pretty good at spending my money. I think things have gotten a little bit more out of control ever since I started the channel, just because you want to show stuff off, right, in video format. But whenever I felt like I was spending too much, I would just sell some stuff. I'm really not that crazy about collecting where I feel like I absolutely have to hold on to everything, even though it may look like I have a ton of stuff, which truthfully I do. But you gotta know when to stop, and you gotta know when to let go of stuff. Next up, we got a question from Hamed HM5 Cutie. What do you do if there is an old figure that you really want, but no matter which store you look at, the figure is outrageously priced? Do you try and negotiate with the seller? If so, I would love to know if you can give us any tips about buying older figures. I mean, it really, for negotiating, it would depend on which store you find it on, right? Because if you see it on like AmiAmi, you're not negotiating. If you see it on Mandarake, you're not negotiating. But if you see it on eBay, there's a chance. If you see it on MFC, there's a chance, right? I think you can't just like jump in immediately and try and get the price lower if they like just put it up. I think with time, they'll more likely than not drop the price, and that's kind of your time to strike if you're trying to get like some bartering going in, right? But I think my best advice, honestly, which has worked for me a lot, is to just be patient, because even though it'll feel like that every time you look for that figure, it is expensive and overpriced and you're just never gonna find a good deal on it, eventually you will. It almost feels like that happens all the time. Somebody will let it go for a fair price. That's just kind of how it works, and you need to be there when that happens. So you gotta be diligent. You gotta look for it. You can't lose focus. If you're trying to get it immediately, you're not gonna get the best deal. So it's really a game of patience whether or not you wanna try and like haggle, or you just wanna wait for a better deal. Jong Kino asks, in a hypothetical scenario, if you had to give up your collection but you could only keep one figure, what would that figure be and why? It's gotta be the Max Factory Taiga figure, the one that is based off of the light novel's cover arts. And the reason for it is because it basically covers both bases. It's a Taiga figure, which was the reason I started collecting in the first place, and it was also gifted to me by my girlfriend, so I feel like that makes the most sense. And also, it might just be her best figure. Burn and Fire, do you currently have a Grail figure that you've been hunting for? I got a bunch, but I'll talk about two really quick. One is Guilty Gear's Ramlethal from Max Factory. This figure is like 800 bucks. Have no idea why they have not re-released this figure yet, considering Strive is so popular. And the other one is Disgaea's Plenaire. I don't remember the full name of it, because there's a couple of figures of her, but it's kind of like a hero getup. She's wearing a scarf, she's like sitting on a bunch of rabbits. I think one is actually being eaten by her or something, and she's got this like really goofy shark sword. This is such a bizarre figure, and I've kind of wanted it ever since it came out back in like 2011, but this is elusive. I cannot find this figure anywhere. It is so difficult, never pops up. I just don't think I'm ever gonna own it, but one day I would like to, so I'm gonna keep trying. Roy Nobody asks, what is your biggest anime figure regret? I did talk about a couple, about like selling my figures, but I do have another one for you. So I don't remember which year this was, but one day AmiAmi introduced the pre-owned section. That wasn't always a thing on that site, I'm pretty sure. And we were browsing it, me and a buddy, and we both came across the Bounty Hunter Yoko. And it was like 15,000 yen or something. And if you know that figure, you know that that is extremely cheap. Like even back then, that was a good deal. Even though the exchange rate wasn't as good as it is right now, it's still something that one of us should have bought, but neither of us did. We just kind of like laughed about it and talked about it, and then neither of us pulled the trigger. I still don't know why I didn't buy it that day. Maybe I just didn't have a lot of money to spend, but really dumb. Really should have bought that one, because it's never gonna get re-released for whatever reason, and it's like one of the biggest holy grails out there. But maybe one day I'll get it. But I'm not spending $500, $600, whatever it goes for. I'm not buying that. Could have had it for way cheaper. Okay, so this is a good question. I probably should have done this one earlier, but Akuma asks, how do you feel about the lack of male scale figures, and is there one in particular you would want to be made? Now, there is a lot to talk about with this specific topic. I do think there are a decent amount of male scale figures if you're into certain types of series, right? Like Kotobukiya and Mega House are pretty generous when it comes to like shonen characters, right? Like they'll give you that. But if you're into like any other type of anime, you usually aren't gonna get too many of those characters. And it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I feel like a company like Good Smile, I don't want to point them out directly, but I feel like with as big as they are, I think they should take some risks and stop handing off all of the male characters to Orange Rouge. Cause like, they could do it, man. Like, they only make pop-up parades for male characters or Nendoroids, but like, unless it's Demon Slayer or like that $2,000 FMA figure, which is like, man, I would have bought that if it wasn't $2,000. I think they also made like a ridiculously expensive Miles figure from Spider-Verse. Would have bought that one too, but it was just so goddamn expensive. Again, I don't want to single them out because I think a lot of companies are guilty of this. Some companies just won't make any male figures, but you know, you gotta look at the trends, right? Every year, there's always like a trend and some last longer than others. And right now, and it's kind of been this way for a while, we're really in gacha hell, or heaven, depending on how you look at it, right? But Azur Lane, Blue Archive, Girls Frontline, Arknights, these are what's popular. These are what's selling. Uma Musume is another one. Everybody loves the horse girls. Thankfully, we have like Fates, and I think Genshin has a lot of male characters, but even then, we don't get that many from those series, but at least they do exist, and they happen sometimes. Maybe one of those other series also have some male characters. Arknights, maybe? Again, I don't really play these games, but the majority, right? All of these franchises that are really kind of driving the industry right now just don't feature many male characters. So what are the companies to do? They want to make their money and they know what's selling, so why take the risk? It sucks, but I get it from a business angle. Another thing to consider is OCs, original character figures, right? Because I cover a ton of events, I do the pre-order roundup every month, and there are tons of figures in this category. And they're all women. I don't think I remember a single male in the past like 6 months of talking about those OC characters. That's redundant. OC figures. And I don't know who to blame about that, but it just doesn't seem like when somebody wants to make an OC that it's gonna be a guy. It's always a girl. So you have the OCs that are all women, you have the gacha games that are all women, so where are they gonna pull from at this point, and are they even gonna have enough resources to make male figures when all the female ones are the ones that are popular? I do think companies should take risks, and as somebody who does buy male figures from time to time, like, I do want to see more. And to answer your question, Shulk from Xenoblade and Onizuka from Great Teacher Onizuka. Those are the two characters that I would like to see as a PVC scale figure. Malfunctioning Hero. For the Q&A, if you could change, add on to, or alter any of your figures, how would you? The very first one that comes to mind is unfortunately Nia from Xenoblade 2. I love that figure, but I can't display it. I don't have it out right now because she doesn't really fit nicely into a D-Tall shelf. She will if you like tilt her at a very specific angle, but they changed the way she holds her sword so that it goes all the way behind her. So I would just revert that change and make it look like how it originally did when it went up for pre-order. The other figure that comes to mind is Akko from Little Witch Academia. I don't remember which company made that figure. I think it was Union Creative, but I hate the base. I think everybody who owns that figure just hates the base. It's a plain white disc. It's very boring on its own. And for a show about magic, they could have done so much more with it. Bonus question if not too much time, who are the characters that don't have figures that you wish did? Haruko from Fooly Cooly, Shampoo from Ranma, I know she has a figure arts, but I don't count that, I want a scale figure, and Samidare from Hoshino Samidare, or Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer. Those are like the first three that come to mind. Bucera, I really want to get into Toho figures, but there are so many good ones. Do you have any recommendations, like a personal favorite? My very favorite figure that I currently own right now is the Ramelia Toho Vania figure, but I don't think that one is for everybody, and it's also extremely fragile, so you gotta be careful with it. If you're not into that figure, I would say Alters Flandre, which recently came out. I think it's like one of their best figures, but it's very expensive. The Hata no Kokodo from Q's Q, because I mean, I only just got that one, or really I only just unboxed it, but I was super impressed by it. But again, that one's pretty pricey. And I also want to give a quick shout out to Satori from Q's Q. Now this one isn't as big or as detailed as the previous three, but it is still very pretty. The pastel colors are like really nice on the eyes, and it's not as expensive, right? So I think this one is an easier entry point. And since it's not that big, the box is also like really easy to work with if you don't have a lot of space and you're not sure if you're gonna keep collecting Toho figures. So that's probably the best beginner figure that I have at the moment. Alright, so I think I'm gonna make this my last question. I apologize if I didn't get to you, but I know I've answered a lot at this point. If you want, you could respond with your question again in this comment section and I'll just respond then. Or we could do this again some other time and you could save it for that video. But either way, user Blueberry asked a bunch of stuff. Will we ever see your girlfriend's collection since she is a collector too? Yes, but only when we eventually move in together and we combine all of our stuff. And at that point, I'll just kind of like point out everything that's hers. Every now and then though, I will unbox a figure that she bought. In fact, in our next unboxing video, whenever that's going to be, I will be opening up like 4 of her figures just to show them off. So you will get a little bit of a taste of what she likes to collect. When are we getting the room tour? I'm glad somebody asked this question because I have always wanted to do this video, but it's never been like within my ability to do so. This room is a decent size, but what you're not seeing is how messy this room is. Like over there are so many boxes because all of my stuff is just packed away. Essentially what happened is that I moved once. If you were watching this channel in the beginning, I was in a different room. I moved here and then I was supposed to move again. So most of my stuff is in boxes. I can't really show off my collection because I've been waiting to move before I actually set things up and buy more furniture. So it just would be a waste of time. Like that's why I film in like this one part of the room for the most part, just because that's what like I'm able to show off. That's all the detail space I have. That's the one bookshelf that's in this room. I promise I will do it. I just can't right now. What are your top 3 items in your collection? It doesn't have to be figures since you also collect video games and plushies and the like. So we've answered this kinda throughout the video, but I don't really remember everything I talked about. So I'm gonna give you 3 fresh things to talk about, one from each category that you mentioned actually. So first up, we got Gacha Force. Now this is a very expensive game on the GameCube, but just because it's expensive doesn't mean that like that's why it's one of my top items. A friend just gave this to me. A friend from Canada that I met through streaming. He did not have to give this to me. This is way too generous and I'm never gonna sell it, but I can't believe he was just so nice that like he knew I was collecting, he knew I wanted this, and he knew I wasn't gonna get rid of it, so he just sent it to me. Like I can't believe how nice some people are. But yeah, this also is kind of like a $500 game, so it kind of counts. Next up, I don't have it in front of me, but I'm gonna give a shout out to the Dead Demons Destruction vignette figure from Good Smile Company. I wish I could figure out which box this figure is in, because I would just like pull it out for you, but I'm just happy that I have this because this is a rather rare figure. It's not like insanely overpriced on the aftermarket, but it also doesn't show up that often either. They should really re-release that one since they're making movies for this series now. But yeah, I'm glad I had the foresight to pre-order this when like the manga was first starting out. It's like pretty rare for like a figure to be made when there's only a manga, right? So people weren't really aware that this figure was going to be something that was sought after, but everybody who knows Asano Inio knew that this was something that they probably should pick up. So I'm gonna put that in my top 3. And then for my last item, I'm gonna say the Edea Lee plushie from Bravely Default. Let me go grab it. So this is the Edea Lee plushie. It is very well made. It's a nice size. It's very soft, very high quality. This does have a story to it. Essentially, a friend of mine gets married. The guy who actually introduced me to my girlfriend, he goes to Japan. And while he's in Japan, during this time, these plushies, all of the characters from Bravely Default are getting made and they're being sold at the Square Enix Cafe. So I message him and I'm like, hey, can you look for Ring a Bell so I can give it to my girlfriend? I knew she would like this plushie. So he gets it for me, I pay him for it, he comes home, I get the plush, I give it to her. She loves it, right? A year later, or maybe it's 2, my brain's not working right now, he actually invites us to go to Japan with him, and we do. And for some reason, these plushies are still available. Like, you cannot buy these online. They are very, very difficult to buy online. But we go to the cafe, and because they're available, she buys me Edea Lee. So it's kind of just like a nice thank you for me getting her the Ring a Bell a while back, right? So yeah, I don't know, I just like that little trade we did over a year's time. And this is my favorite character from the game, the best character from the game. I don't really like the other Bravely Default games besides the first one, but this one's always gonna hold a place in my heart. And I don't know, it's just like so cute. This is such a nice plushie. And like a lot of these other sentimental things, never gonna get rid of it. And finally, what is the best well-made figure you own? Not your favorite, just best in quality. It's gotta be Flandre or Oscar. I don't think any other figure have come close so far. I think Sekiro, which I reviewed a week or two ago, is technically a little bit more detailed than Oscar, but I also think it has more problems, whereas Oscar was just like straightforward and really nice looking. But with that, I think it's time to wrap up. So, thank you very much for submitting your questions. Hopefully you liked my answers. Again, this was my first time trying this, so I feel like this video was longer than it should have been, but we'll see what happens when I edit this one down. Once again, thank you for subscribing. It really did mean a lot to me. I'm going to try and improve my content as we move forward, and hopefully I get some fun stuff out there for you guys. I don't know exactly what the next video is going to be, but there will be something. So until then, stay tuned, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Later.